Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update. First part thereof, and probably only part thereof, for the 4th of August 2025. We'll start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, and you can find them linked in the description below. 1,010 personnel lost. That is above 1,000 again, so it's good news for the Ukrainians. 1 tank and 8 troop-carrying AFEs, even though 8 is below the daily average quite considerably. That is an uptick from almost, well, I think it was 0, wasn't it? Really low numbers in these categories recently. 28 artillery systems just above the daily average there, and 85 vehicles and fuel tanks below the 100 loss threshold that I usually look at. I don't know if there's too much to say about this list. I haven't seen any loss lists from Andrew Perpetua, so we'll leave it there, just fairly quiet in some ways. Now, there was an uptick in soldiers lost back to over 1,000, and there's a couple of claims concerning troop concentrations that were hit by the Ukrainians. Ukrainians have had a fairly good 24 hours in hitting some, I think, decent bits of equipment, which we'll come on to, and some troop accumulation. So around 15 soldiers were killed in a HIMARS strike on a military logistics base near the village of Belovska in Belgorod region. So that's over the border into Russia. According to Russian sources, the strike hit a concentration of personnel and equipment. Following the attack, the base was relocated. And just another one I'm picking out here. Last night, Ukrainian forces carried out a missile strike on a temporary base of the Russian 74th Brigade's engineering platoon, killing an unknown number of Russian troops and wounding even more. I'm not sure where that is and whether it's indeed the same incident or not. I don't think it is. But anyway, that has happened. So that could explain why there's a little bit of an uptick, as there seemed to be. And there was another troop accumulation one I think I saw in the last 24 hours as well, but I haven't got that here. Now, talking about troops and in this case, the number of troops Ukraine has access to, soldiers from 72 countries are fighting for the armed forces of Ukraine. 40% of them are from South America, according to Hromadske. At the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and this is an impressive stat, 100 to 150 foreigners join the AFU every month, and now this figure has increased to about 600. 600 people voluntarily joining the Ukrainian armed forces per month is a number that the Ukrainians are going to be desperately happy to receive. That's pretty impressive, I would have thought. Um, okay, Russian assault intensity fell in late July, according to some stats here, with daily attacks dropping from 186 to 171.5 and then 155 in early August. Assault groups are now smaller, but tactics remain aggressive and losses high, according to Deep State here. So there's you can see there's a real downward tick there right at the end of the infographic, right at the end of the graph. And that suggests a fairly low number of attacks, considering what's been taking place since, just trying to see, 1st of May. So you can see May, we had some high numbers right at the beginning of May, and now we're down here. Not as low as it was actually in February time, but that could be to do with the weather. Okay, moving on these, and this is one of the good bits of news for the Ukrainians here. On the 2nd of August 2025, AFU conducted a precision strike against Russian military targets in temporarily occupied territory of Zaporizhia region. As a result of the operation, Ukrainian long-range fires assets destroyed a Russian S-300 air defense missile system that would entail destroying all or most of the parts of that battery, rather than just say a launcher, command and control, radar, so on and so forth. So that would be really good news if that has happened. There was talk about that the other day. I think I reported on that possibly happening. So that's confirmation from the general staff themselves. Then there was this from last night. In the new operations, Ukraine's SBU claimed their drones struck 5 Russian fighter jets at the Saki air base in occupied Crimea, fully destroying a Su-30SM and damaging another Su-30SM, as well as hitting 3 Su-24s. An ammunition depot was also targeted. So you've got potentially 4 damaged planes and 1 completely destroyed plane. That is a very good day at the office, because those, I mean, I don't know if it's relevant to give a monetary value to these. The functional value is incredibly high. I think that's 25 to $30 million or something like that a pop. Very good night for the Ukrainians there. Here we have an incredible scene of Russians um, meeting their end, probably with a drone flying through a window to see Russians who were um, hanging out for a bit of a breather, obviously near the front lines. That is an entire group of soldiers targeted by a drone just going through the window there. Just goodness me, if you're going to stay somewhere like that, yeah, stay aware. Don't clump together, and maybe put something up over the windows. There's my advice. And then we hear that the security services of Ukraine claims it successfully carried out a drone. Oh no, I've got that in the wrong place. I thought that was going to be the rebuilding of Donetsk Air Base. So this is just reconfirmation. Don't know if it tells us anything different, but that's the Saki airbase there. Locals reported a drone attack on Crimea overnight, but there are no visual confirmations yet. We'll have to wait for updates or satellite imagery, says Special Kherson Cat. Um, so then we move on to another video here. This one was doing the rounds yesterday. Ukrainian soldiers destroyed a Russian bunker at close range with a grenade launcher in Donetsk region, clearing it out. Wow. Imagine loading some grenades into there from almost point blank range. Bosh, that's gonna hurt the Russians inside. Then we have this video: tactical trucks of the Russian-Ukrainian war can't operate in daylight within 20 kilometers of frontline trenches. The yo-yos who say, this is Trent Telenko, Ukraine is a unique World War I type theater. It doesn't apply to Western militaries. Ignore this fundamental 2025 logistical reality. Here you see a destroyed Russian Ural 4320 truck and a 2A-18D30 howitzer somewhere at the front, and that is majorly here. And then there must be a lot of fuel on board there, because it's leaving this trail of burning ground after it. That is a really severe hit from a what is that? Is that a drone, or is that? I don't know. Yeah, I think I don't know. Could be drone, could be a mine. Um, a double tap on attack on on emergency workers in the Zaporizhia region from the Russians again. Russian drone sets a car alight in Hliapole, which is very close to the front line in the southern front there. After firefighters attended, they themselves were attacked by a drone. Thankfully, they were not injured, but the department fire truck was badly damaged. Just the Russians, bastards. And then a few things on the front line. So here, David D, who some people don't think is too much of a cheerleader for Ukraine and overlooks certain things. Day 5 after these Russian sources like Aiden, who are complete Russian propagandists. Day 5 after Fish and Aiden saying that the town has fallen. That's Pokrovsk. So saying that the town hasn't fallen. That this is Pokrovsk. That the Russians were overstating their positions there. Playfry says maybe it's not falling because of absolutely unreal Ukrainian efforts and emergency redeployments of brigades, which will weaken the fronts from where they came from. Just saying though, a small suggestion. So that it hasn't fallen is down to the Ukrainians plugging some holes there with redeployed units, and that will weaken Ukraine elsewhere. So it's pretty desperate in Pokrovsk. That seems to be the case. Now, there has been talk about Kherson being the site of a Russian attack, a looming Russian attack. They've been maybe softening up the area, taking out some bridges and whatnot. Ukrainian intelligence reports that no Russian troops are preparing to cross the Dnipro by boat or storm Kherson. Defense Forces South spokesman Voloshin told Suspilna, according to him, the bridge served civilians and there was no military sites nearby. This is a bridge that was attacked that I reported yesterday, and then they attacked near the bridge subsequently. But it doesn't seem like that pertains to a military target, really, and it just shows you it's just war war criminality again. Okay, moving on to distant strikes. Although I've touched on some of the equipment that's been destroyed by these in Crimea, there was a concerted attack on Odessa overnight from the Russians. In fact, where is the? I don't have um, the infographic. I better find that for you. So here's the infographic that I was looking for. 163 missiles and drones sent into Ukraine, 161 taken out. So I think that means that one missile, Kinjal missile, was sent at Starokonstantiniv. That's the air base in Khmelnytsky region. That's the hypersonic missile. I think that got through, but didn't cause too much damage. At least that's what the Ukrainians said. And then 161 out of 162 drones were intercepted. That's insanely good rates. Like, honestly, that is incredible. Is that a case of the interceptors doing their job now? Uh, Tremendous interception rate last night, equating to 99.4% interception rate. By the way, I've just also found Andrew Perpetua's loss list, and I might as well go through them with you now. So sorry, this is all uh, out of turn. Here we can see that it seems the Russians have lost more in terms of ATVs, civilian vehicles, about the same actually. Ukrainians losing quite a bit of artillery there, and other. Actually, Russians losing a fair bit of artillery, but it's this, the tanks, APCs, IFEs, the traditional combat assets the Ukrainians lose more of because they use more of them. The Russians just using motorbikes, as you can see there. A lot of motorcycles, a lot of Desert Cross 1000-3s, all that kind of stuff. Right, let's look at the Ukrainian losses really quickly. 3 radar systems in there, P-18 Malachites. That's a little bit larger. That's going to hurt a little bit. P-18 radar. Yeah, there you go. So that's a much larger bit of kit than the ANTPQs and whatnot that we otherwise see, such as the ANTPQ-36. That's sort of one that goes on the top of a Humvee. You got a radar. Not sure about that one. So anyway, Lancet's taking 2 of them out, and the ANTPQ taken out by a Vandal drone. Then we've got 3 UGVs, a bunch of artillery, including a damaged two S-22 Bogdana. You've got damaged M777, M109, unlabeled multiple launch rocket system, a D-20, D-30, etc., etc. So range of artillery, nothing too bad. Tanks there, we've got 4 T-64s, 1 destroyed, 3 damaged. And then a few MRAPs, not as many as we normally see, actually, to be honest, and mobility vehicles. So that's good there. And then only 3 ATVs, and then a bunch of civilian vehicles, a few decoys at the bottom. Um, Interesting that ANTPQ, they have decoys of those as well. And indeed, the ANTPQ-36 that was hit up here might have been a decoy as well. So as you can see there. Right, okay, let's now go back to the Russian losses, and we can see some surveillance and comms equipment, electronic warfare equipment. Got quite a few bits of artillery, including a destroyed TOS-1A thermobaric launcher, so that's good news for the Ukrainians. Range of other things, including a bunch of D-30s, a single infantry fighting vehicle destroyed, BMP there, and then a single mobility vehicle, Tiger M, abandoned. A few trucks, Kamaz trucks mainly, and then you're down to the massive list of motorcycles, four-wheelers, quads, and whatnot, as a battle tricycle, and a Desert Cross 1000-3, and then civilian vehicles thereafter. So really relying on those unarmored vehicles to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Anyway, back to the distance strikes. So remember, 161 out of 162 drones were intercepted. That's really good news. But Odessa was very heavily targeted, and I assume, therefore, most damage that is done here is done from falling drone debris, and these weren't the initial places that were actually targeted, but a lot of destruction to commercial property there. Concerted attack on Odessa overnight, says Tim White, as I reported in the early hours at the end of yesterday's thread. Mercifully, no reports of death or injury. Russia attacked the port areas of Odessa and nearby Chornomorsk. The fire service published this video. And near Odessa port, 1 drone destroyed many kiosks in the area known as Radio Market due to the selling of electronics and household appliances. It's been a morning of clearing up and rescuing what remains of smallholders in the market. So, real shame there. More commercial um, woes for the Ukrainians there. Another body's been found in Kramatorsk. That's 3 days after they struck the center of the city there. That leaves 6 dead in that strike. And a big fire in Lviv this morning in a residential building, but it could have been someone with a hand grenade going off. That's one rumor, or who knows what else. Um, and interestingly, in Kiev, a landmine was found next to a children's playground. Explosive experts were called in to a district in Kiev to ensure the device was made safe. It's not known how it got there. Wow. You wouldn't want to send your kids to school uh, thinking there's going to be a landmine, a non-zero chance of a landmine being on the route to school. Right, tonight, drone strikes again cause fires in Odessa, says Euromoney Press. As usual, drones just randomly hit civilian objects, a market, a dorm, and a flat. Luckily, no one was hurt. We're not standing by and are now. Oh, okay, it goes on to do a fundraiser. But to be honest, like these are probably not what were aimed at, although they often do aim at civilian targets. The Russians, of course, that's a topic I often broach, which is what are they really aiming at most of the time? About the first attack on Khmelnytsky, says Tim White, this morning, the governor, Serhiy Tuyurin, said, quote, there were no casualties or deaths. As a result of the attacks, part of the road surface was damaged. So either playing down or declaring that there was no, very little to no damage to the airbase there. 3 drones also attacked, 2 were shot down, and 1 stopped with electronic warfare. So really good interception rates, and that's good for Staro-Konstantinov, which is that military airbase where they fly an awful lot of their top planes from. Okay, this is what I sort of referenced earlier when I thought this is what we're going to talk about. So Russia's restored a runway at the occupied Donetsk airport for kamikaze drone launches, according to the Institute for the Study of War. So this is the runway just sort of northwest of Donetsk. If I remember correctly, it was kind of just north of here where they were fighting for so long. This was like the front line for months and months and months when they were fighting over Avdiivka, when Avdiivka was a stronghold of Ukrainian resistance. It's subsequently fallen, of course, in that pretty disastrous uh, time when the Russians were absolutely hammering the Ukrainians with guided glide bombs. But it was just north of this airbase airstrip that the fighting was taking place for a long time. Now, if they have fully refurbished this airstrip for use by the Russians for drone launches, that is a bit of a challenge. Something else, I guess, to shoot at. Okay, if you remember those two, if we got So I showed you this yesterday. In fact, it was my thumbnail yesterday, where you had the Sochi oil depot on fire, and you had those young Russian teenagers doing selfies and videos in front of it. And I said it's not going to be long until they get a knock on the door because the Russian FSB are not going to be happy with that. Anyway, the Ministry of Internal Affairs is looking for teenagers who filmed the video against the backdrop of the burning oil depot in Sochi, and I think they actually handed themselves in the end. So 2 girls and a guy were detained in Adler for filming against the backdrop of a burning oil depot, says Kommersant. They apologized on camera after filming a video against the backdrop of burning oil depot in Sochi. They were detained by officers and the main director at the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia for Krasnodar Krai. The department's press service reported a protocol on an administrative offence was drawn up against the 20-year-old girl. So the Russians, as expected, didn't like that at all. And indeed, this is them looking sad on camera at the Sochi police station. They don't look too, well, they look like just teenagers, don't they? So that is them. And they are not so happy now. I think they've been fined $500. Is what's happened to them. Yeah, it's not written there. I'm pretty sure they've been fined $500. Right, as reported last night on my thread, says Tim White, going on to Ukrainian strikes on Russia. Ukraine managed to hit Russia's railway again, this time in Volgograd region, and the hit is caught on video. You can go and check that out. Here is some what looks like pretty hardcore destruction, but I don't think it was that widespread. Russian Telegram channels report a drone attack on Volgograd region of Russia. Russian railroad logistics was attacked. This is a continuing series of attacks that aim to disrupt Russian military logistics that supplies the front lines. Airports of Volgograd and Tambov were closed for flights during the night. So it had a wider effect. Um, so these Ukrainian drones striking the Archeda railway station in Volgograd, damaging a building with relay cabinets and causing partial power loss along the railway line. Train delays have been reported. They, as mentioned, this is a systematic approach of the Ukrainians at the moment to degrade the Russian railway logistics. Then there was a lot of imagery coming out of Kurgan yesterday of some kind of big gas fire. I don't know if this has anything to do with the war per se. It's difficult to know, but when you have exploding gas infrastructure, gas distribution station, when that's on fire, you can't help but think it's got something to do with the war. Um, yeah, because it happens all too often. So that's something else the Russians have to deal with. And this is speaking of Sochi. This is what people landing in Sochi had to see as they were landing. This is a plane, and it gives you a sense. Sochi is obviously a holiday destination for the Russians. When you've got burning oil depots right next to the airport, um, that gives you a sense that yeah, Russia is at war, and you Russians should really bloody know about it because your leaders have done all this. You need to understand that this war affects the Ukrainians, like in this way that you're seeing through the window of the airplane every single day. That's what you're doing to them. So there's a bit of comeuppance for you. Right, satellite photos showed 3 hits on the roof of Penza's Electropribor factory following Ukraine's attack on Sunday. So I reported this yesterday morning. The plant is perhaps Russia's most important electronics defense industrial plant, says Tim White. Exal Nova rates it very likely drones went through the roof, significantly damaging the workshop there. So hopefully good news on damage done to that target. And we're going to move on to other bits and pieces to end the video. Voronezh is somewhere that has been attacked a number of times. It's not just dealing with drones and strikes by the Ukrainians, but look at this, just insane weather. Weather's been sweeping through Russia and indeed Ukraine, causing all sorts of issues. And Voronezh is not getting away likely there, as you can see. Wow, bit of a whirlpool going on there. Right, so that is Voronezh. We have OPEC plus countries have agreed to increase oil production by 548,000 barrels per day starting in September, a move aimed at stabilizing the market amid concerns about US pressure on countries that buy Russian oil, according to Reuters. Now, remember, the 10 to 12 days ultimatum that Trump had set for Russia is going to run out soon. So, what Steve Witkoff, he was supposed to be there, I think, yesterday, today. I think he's going to be there on the 6th or 7th in Russia. That's Steve Witkoff, Trump's golfing buddy and real estate mogul mate. He is somehow the envoy to Russia, as if like he knows what he's doing. Anyway, um, he'll likely be eaten alive in Russia. But if the US have changed their rhetoric, if Trump has finally understood what Russia are about, then might expect some heavy sanctions hit on both Russia, but also secondary sanctions on China and India. So there's a lot of talk at the moment on Chinese and Indian oil um, purchases from Russia, with even Stephen Miller coming on TV and saying that India are just as important as Russia as China, sorry, in buying oil from Russia. So oil falls on the Russian concerns. So OPEC plus output hike. Reuters says a couple of things, bringing the price of Brent crude down and WTI price per barrel down. I don't know what the price of Urals is, but it's hopefully it'll be considerably lower than what Brent is now, according to Max 25 at 69.24 a barrel, and WTI at 66.94. Both contracts closed down about $2 a barrel. So that's good for Russia. But if they're producing more, then, what you want is producing less and selling it at less. That's the ideal situation. So if you produce it at less, but you can sell more, then you can get around the lower profits by selling a greater volume. Now, 2 nuclear submarines that Trump sent after Medvedev's words are closer to Russia. Uh, they've arrived at their deployment site, apparently. Trump said that Witkoff would likely visit Russia on the 6th or 7th. He would impose sanctions on Russia after August the 8th, but noted that Russia has learned to avoid them well. So he's already curtailing the impact of those sanctions himself. He just shoots himself in the foot all the time. A reporter asked him, is there anything Russia can do to avoid sanctions at this point? Trump, yeah, get a deal where people stop getting killed. Suitably vague, but unlikely to happen probably by the August the 8th, let's face it. So Putin said he's ready to meet Zelensky, but only after the completion of discussions at the, quote, at the expert level. This is typical Putin kind of delay. Putin is playing Trump again, says the analyst, offering something he has no intention of doing in the hope that he can get around Trump and secondary sanctions. It's so easy to say without actually doing it. The big question is, will Taco actually fall for it again, or is he, even hard to imagine, bored with Putin's deceptions? We shall see. And then we have here, this is Matt Whitaker. Yep,
It's
he's a
impossible.
guy who was trying to sell the Big Dick toilet several years back. That is him. He's now ambassador to NATO because that's the seriousness with which Trump makes his appointments. Anyway, says the following.
It's impossible to get in the mind of Vladimir Putin because it's sick and twisted and probably not logical. But, you know, I'm guessing that he doesn't want to take on the most powerful military in the world, which is the United States of America. It's impossible.
So sort of bellicose rhetoric from Whitaker, but also slagging off Putin. That's what we want to hear. Sick, twisted, and probably not logical. Yep. Okay. That more of that from the Americans. It's just that's realism. That's what we know about Putin, right? Latvia. Finally, I'm going to just leave you with this. Latvia blocks 10 websites spreading Russian propaganda. Baltic states have been raising alarms about a growing Russian threat to the region and NATO. This needs to happen in Moldova. It needs to happen in Romania. It needs to happen in Poland and the Baltics, and I'll tell you what, all of Europe. Russian disinformation, Russian propaganda is rife, and it needs to be censored. This is warfare. This is Russian information warfare, and we need to do more about it. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm going to go and sit by the pool and probably sleep a lot. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.